Hey guys, in the last video I talked about some of the inspirations that I used to begin my film, to write the script. I showed some social media posts, I talked about some of the movies that I looked into, and I also talked about some of the books that I looked into that are going to help inform the look of my film. And towards the end of that video, I talked about how I'm going to be beginning the storyboard phase next. So in this video, I intend to show you just that. I'm going to show you how I'm going to set up my files, how I'm going to go about the process, and I'm going to talk briefly about aspect ratios because I think that's important for this video as well. If you're new to this channel, my name's Sandy Sanchez. I'm producing my very first animated short film, Lucid, and in this channel, I'm documenting every step of the process, every milestone, every blunder, and everything in between. I'm very excited that you're here. Let's get started. So, finally, the time has arrived. I can start storyboarding. I did my script, which I mentioned took me 7 years to write. I've collected all the inspiration up until now that I think I'll need for this phase, and now it's time to put pen to paper. It's time to put Cintiq pen to the screen, whatever you want to call it, right? It's time to start storyboarding. So, before I begin that process, there's something I want to talk about right before I begin, and that's aspect ratios. So what are aspect ratios? To put it simply, all it is the shape of the frame in which you're watching the video. Some aspect ratios are narrower, that look more like a square. Some are wider. And why is that the case? So just to give you a quick rundown, to give you a quick lesson on aspect ratios and formats. Prior to the 1950s, most films were shot in a square 4:3 aspect ratio. And that's because at the time, the most readily and cheaply available film stock was a 35mm film, which had a very square frame. Later, we saw the advent of the CinemaScope process, which took that very same 35mm square film, and using an anamorphic lens, compressed images were fit into that square frame. Then using special projectors, that compressed image was then uncompressed and projected onto a wide screen, hence why we got our first widescreen format. After that came multiple competing formats. There's too many to name. After, with the introduction of TVs in every home, we saw that have its own aspect ratio. After that, in the 90s, we got digital formats, which is where the current aspect ratios that we have now have been established. And while in the past, most aspect ratios were a result of technical advancements in function, nowadays, directors have the ability to use aspect ratios as a way to help tell the story and a new front to be able to express creativity. As a side note, if you want to dive deeper into the subject of aspect ratio and their history, here are two videos that helped me greatly. I'll be sure to link them in the description below. A quick Google search will net you tons and tons of articles on this subject as well. So, what does all this aspect ratio talk have to do with my film? Well, obviously, I'm going to be using multiple aspect ratios to help tell my story. In the scenes where I want to emphasize the vastness and the emptiness of the shot, and where I want to make the character feel small, I'm going to be using the 16:9 aspect ratio. But in the scenes where it takes place throughout the city streets, and the scenes where the character is chasing the flame, I'm going to be using the widescreen 239:1 aspect ratio. I went ahead and I created these two storyboard templates to accommodate for each one of the aspect ratios. As you can see in this one, that's for the 16:9 aspect ratio, and then for this one, that's for the 239:1 aspect ratio. But with these two templates, I'll probably only be using these to create a print copy of my storyboard just to have it on hand for quicker reference. But I wanted to take the time to show you guys just sort of down to the brass tacks how I'm going to be setting up my Photoshop files for the 16:9 and for the 239:1 formats. And while I'm at it, I'll show you some of the work that I've already done. And I guess before I begin, I wanted to sort of direct you over to Toniko Pantoja's video about this, because this is actually where I learned this style of storyboarding from. So I'm going to link that video in the description. As you can see here, I have a widescreen resolution here. This is a 1920 by 802, but it represents a 239 by 1 aspect ratio, and these portions of the film are going to take place in this format. Here I have all the different shots that I've already done. I'm just going to cycle through some of them. There's a city street, there's a snowflake landing on a car, and then there's another shot where we're looking at it's a huge billboard. So that's what I have so far, right? That's what I've worked on thus far. But how am I actually doing these? Looking over at my script, right? On my script, I've broken it down into 15 sequences, and then those 15 sequences are then further broken down into shots. So right now on this project, I'm still working on sequence 1. The next shot that I'm going to move on to, it reads, the traffic signal counts down from 2, then 1, then turns green, along with the walk signal that says walk, walk. This sets off the tumult of people like horses in a race as they come and go, walking along the wet, snowy street. So in this shot that I'm going to create here from my script, I want to take those words and now interpret them into visuals, right? Going back to me breaking down my script into 15 parts, I have images that I compiled from the internet that I broke those down into a folder that has 15 sequences in it. In that folder, I have photos that sort of correspond to some of the images that I see in my mind when I think of these lines. So for instance, in this line of the traffic light that then changes from stop to go, and the walk signal in the city, I have several photographs for it, right? And I'll pull them up on the screen. Taking these images that I have on my computer that I put off to one of the screens that I have to the side, now I have my Photoshop file here ready for me to work with the line from the script that now I'm going to interpret. And then now I'm going to show you how I'm going to set up this layer structure. So over here I have a folder for each of the shots, and then now that this new shot, which is the shot of the traffic light of the walk signal, whatever you may, it's going to get its own folder, right? So it would be shot 6, and then shot 6 would be the background. And then here's where I'm going to draw all the background elements, however I decide to set them up. And then whatever other elements that I feel are going to animate, I would put them on their own layer, right? That's what I'm going to do now. And I'm probably going to do a time lapse just so that I can work. And I'll try to talk over and try to explain what my sort of approach is as I work. So over here, I'm just putting in the beginnings of the background, starting with some line work. Usually what I do is I paint in over these lines later. Over here, I started a new layer, and that's where I'm going to put the light pole. And then, you know, I'm just going to start chipping away at the details for that. And just one thing that I try to keep in mind when I'm working like this is just, yeah, you want to get details down correctly, but just also remember that, like, you kind of got to keep working, so knock these out as quickly as possible. So that's something I have to continually remind myself of. And now over here is where I start the coloring part, and to be honest, I'll have to admit that sometimes I'll try to start organized, but once I start coloring, things might get a little disorganized, and I kind of just go in, so you might see a little bit of that here. And at this point, I'm adding some more of the details and the fog, and I put in the little 3 with the stop hand sign inside of the traffic light. I don't know what you call it, but the thing that counts down basically. And then, you know, just going in and, you know, highlighting that fog, and, you know, I really liked the way that was starting to look. Here I'm finally going to take the first layer comp of this board, which is obviously with the stop sign with the 3 in it, and there I am labeling it, but I think that in this instance I mislabeled these. So now that I have all the elements of this shot ready, the background, the light pole, the fog, the snow, for each one of the next iterations or layer comps of this shot, I'm going to create separate elements for each one of those comps. So in a moment, you're going to see me duplicating the background and the fog and the pull, and for the next one would be the 2 for this frame of this shot. And you can see there that I'm drawing the 2, several attempts there, and then it's gonna get its own layer comp right there. That's me labeling the next layer comp. Then I'm gonna move on to duplicating all these elements again for the next instance of this shot. And then I'm gonna color it in. Then I'm gonna color in the 1 for the stop sign here. As you can see there, I'm moving on to the 1. And then this will get its own layer comp. And I mean, I feel like this creates a lot of layers, which to me doesn't feel right, but this is how I'm working thus far. And if I find a more efficient way of making these layer comps, I'm definitely gonna move on to that. Then finally, I'm gonna move on to one more instance, but this one is gonna be where it has the walk sign on it, where you see the little man walking. And of course, this is gonna get its own layer comp as well. So now here I am labeling it, and again, I think I mislabeled these, but whatever. And then now here's me toggling back to the previous shots and just seeing how these new frames that I made jive with the old shots, and to see if, just to get a sense of the rhythm of how the scene is turning out at this point. And there it is, that's how I'm working. At this point, it's just a matter of doing more of this. And here, this was a previous one that I had. This is a previous shot that I have, still from sequence 1. But the reason why I decided to split sequence 1 into separate after Photoshop projects was because with this one, it's in the 16:9 format, and it's going to change from the 16:9 format to the widescreen format, like here. And I guess if we can cycle through these shots, it's gonna have like an excerpt at the beginning. Then we get our opening shot, which, you know, would be wide and, you know, expansive and empty. And then we get a shot of the snowflake falling down from the sky into the city, into civilization. And if you look at my script, you would see this shot in written form, and then here's how I envisioned it looking in my mind. And then we get that same shot continuing here, where the snowflake lands on the car. Then we get the shot of the billboards changing, and then we get the shot of the traffic light, and then it goes to that. And I guess just to illustrate what I have in mind for when these aspect ratio shots transition to these, this is somewhat akin to what I had in mind. And in case you're curious, this was concept art that I had done from way long ago. Obviously, these storyboards, I'm trying to knock these out as quickly as possible, so they're somewhat muddy, but whichever way you can work to get your vision out is what matters at the end of the day, because once you get to the concept art project part of the project, that's where you can really flesh out the actual physical look that the audience is going to see. And so right now I'm just trying to get the sort of beats and the shots out, and that's how I'm going to be proceeding. And I hope this was helpful. So that's it, guys. Hopefully this video illustrates how I'll be working about my storyboards and how I go about collecting materials to help me along the way. If this video helped you in any capacity, that's even better for me. As of now, it's just a matter of keeping my nose to the grindstone to sort of crank these boards out. I anticipate that this process may be drawn out, so I'll keep you guys updated on any progress. Definitely on here, but also on my socials. So definitely go check those out. So until then, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take it easy.